This is CinemaAttic, our weekly Sunday Vermut. Alberto, get that cartela off the camera. Hey, how are you?
Always good. Every week I'm craving for Sunday to be here to have a little bit of time to see you and spend time with you and with brilliant guests. Particularly excited about today, Rafa. Particularly excited about the three guests today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Still here, locked in the flat. I've been out a bit more this week because I have the wee puppy and needs exercise.
It's the first Sunday that is not an overwhelming sun, or we don't have like a bright sun to make jokes with the Spaniards while they have rain. It's the first time that it is a kind of gray Sunday. No, it feels like the right thing to be inside, to be doing this Vermut indoors.
This program is done live, but will stay in our Facebooks and it will stay in our website for time to come. So you can start watching it now, relax, you're allowed to go out, do it, and then come back and finish watching
social distancing.
As you said, we have such an amazing list of guests today. We have three. We have Asier Altuna, we have Jaione, and we have Pedro Collantes.
Yes, I'm particularly excited about this week. Like the best thing, if there's something positive out of this Cuarentena, is the chance to catch up with directors that we love and we had here previously, or some that we would love to have here, some that we meet for the first time, and hoping that this 90 minutes of film conversation with a caña, with some olives, help you for the rest of the week, and you feel a bit accompanied, or that someone is there, that you feel part of a family. Or you, Rafa?
Sure. Well, it needs to be said, happy Mother's Day to all the Spanish mummies. Today's Mother's Day. So if you are listening to us live, well, think it twice. Think it twice. You may want to, you should maybe be spending time with your mom rather than listening to these two nutters talking about cinema.
Yeah, CinemaAttic Cuarentena, again, housekeeping for those new. CinemaAttic is the platform promoting Spanish and Latin American independent cinema since 10 years ago in Scotland. We're excited about sharing, and we're excited about this form of audiovisual activism ongoing throughout the year. And now with the COVID, we're adapting and moving online with this initiative, CinemaAttic Cuarentena, that, as most of you know already, works like this. Every Monday, we release a new program of 7 films, and throughout the week, you watch them, you tell us what you think, you vote them, and then we gather here and we chat about them. So leave your comments, as usual, leave your comments, whatever you thought about Cucli, or lo que tú dices que yo soy, or Pablo, or whatever you think about Rafa, or myself, whatever.
Whatever you think about Alberto or me, please feel free to leave your insults in Facebook. Nobody will be banned. In any case, CinemaAttic will be banned if you are too hard on us. But we are ready for it. We are ready for it. We are ready for criticism. So saying that, shall we start going through the program this week?
Let's do it. And we start with award winning. It's one of those that it won so many awards. It became viral. It was a hot film that year. Voiceover, for good reasons, from the Kimuak catalog. No, one of those many short films discovered and promoted by the Kimuak people.
Well, yes, the film went through the works in everywhere. I mean, this thing went around the world in the circuit, in the festival circuit. It was nominated to a Goya, was in Chicago, was in New York, in Brazil, and it won many awards. Martin Rosete he was very kind, and thank you, Martin, if you're listening to us or helping us. We couldn't find a link with the subtitles and that to offer the film on our website, and you were kind enough to email us and give us that. It's an amazing film, know how it works with what could it have been, what is real and what is not, and it gives a beautiful picture of the human dimension, no, of what we do.
It is great, and it is that kind of broken pieces narrative, no, of where is this taking me? Is this? We were introducing the film saying like these days or the pre-days of COVID that we thought humans we have control over everything. It's great to see a film where you're just, you know, so dependent. You're in extreme circumstances, dependent, and you don't depend on your own. And then obviously that beautiful romantic ending. What is this all about? All these nightmares, all this fear, is all the fear you have before your first kiss, obviously. And it's
first kiss can and should change the world. There's an amazing image there, and it makes the film work so well. And it's a surprise, comes as a surprise, most welcome, and very risky, and it works out very well. Really beautiful film to watch.
Smart, like it's one of those that you think, oh fuck, how smart, the people behind this.
What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, Luis Verdejo in the script, everything is this film that takes you and makes tricks with you and plays with taking you here and then there, and then obviously a grand finale, a great surprise, the zenith of the thriller, and it's beautiful, and it fills you, it fulfills you. Sometimes we like films that throw questions, but sometimes people like films that fulfill you, simply give you a good vibe at the end, and voiceover is that and many more things.
Yeah, absolutely. All the films in the program, just to remind people, it's a collection of, a selection, better said, of the last 10 years of our programs in Scotland. So we would say that every film we have shown along the last 10 years is great. They're always in a program, there's always a film that is stronger than others. And this is the selection, so the whole program is so strong. If we talk about voiceover, Martin Rosete, we are in Spain. But yes, it's a great film, but if we start talking about now Xavier Marrades and his film Cucli, I think is we need to keep it low so we can keep increasing it. Otherwise, we will be always repeating ourselves, what a great film, what a great film. They are amazing. I remember Cucli the first time I watched it, and how deep inside me got, how really moving is that love story, and how defined against whoever can think on my relationship with this dog.
How can you talk, Rafa?
I don't mind.
Like, first of all, the friendship relationship, but what surprises me is how a film can touch on something as deep as resurrection and life after death, and not falling into tender. At sometimes you can think that the film is gonna be so cheesy, maybe, or so condescending in a way, and not most of the films trying to touch into this, go very thought-provoking, go very pretentious. How works in that line between warmth and beauty? I don't know. We don't want to say, it's the best film, or we keep saying it, but it's hard to control ourselves because we're very passionate about Cucli. It's just something else. It's a different level.
No, it's amazing about the lost love and the remains and holding on to something that is gone, or maybe it's not gone. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful poetry underpinning the whole film. It doesn't have a second that is not moving or really building that kind of feeling inside you, bit by bit through the timeline, until eventually you are really taken and amazed and moved by the story. So yes, great. If you are talking about human beings and people and how react and how we perceive other people, lo que tú dices que soy, what you say I am, Virginia Garcia del Pino. really have to say, I watched this film recently. I don't remember watching it back in the day, and I have heard of it but never seen it. I was really amazed with the documentary, how it goes with different professions, different aspects, how people perceive being a grave digger, or being working at a slaughterhouse, or being a civil guard in Spain. What they like, what they dislike, what they feel people perceive. But the strongest point has to be the end, when everybody has been shot in one place.
Static.
The camera is stuck, and then at the end, those places are shot again, but without the character, without the protagonist, without the person, the trait. And then you discover that the empty space, the meaningless space. So it gives meaning to all those professions that maybe people discard as not good enough, or as something that they don't want to do.
Yeah. Low paid, low skill. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, second
Really?
swearing, put a fiber in the swear
I'll
box.
put a fiber in the cinematic box. But honestly, like Virginia Garcia del Pino is a basic filmmaker, because she's been doing mostly in the documentary part of Spanish cinema. But what she's doing with this film is so smart. What you were saying, static camera. She's bringing back in some circles of the documentary, of the creative documentary. When you see a interview, it's a bad thing. It's it's just like it's not cool. It's not a tool that documentary filmmakers use anymore, or sometimes they think as a thing maybe for a TV documentary and not a creative documentary. And Virginia Garcia del Pino reuses and reimagines interviews. Empathy, empathy with those characters, the distance with the camera, and what you were saying, the importance of these jobs when you see those places without them, no? Yeah. Absolutely, it's brilliant, Virginia Garcia del Pino.
Yes, Monica is saying hello, and we have Alan as well joining in.
Hola, amigos.
Sorry, following on what you say, what you say, I am, Virginia, get it right. It's a great idea, amazingly developed, great characters, because the documentary relies so much on that, on finding that character, and she doesn't find one, but 6 or 7, and it works so well.
Rafa, how many times you've been asked or the famous question, like, so what do you do for a living? I think it's a horrible question.
Yeah, I deny any relationship with CinemaAttic.
No, it's like I do this for a living, and then I have this circus called CinemaAttic.
I don't want nowadays. Of course, I'm proud.
No, honestly, but how many times a taxi driver here in Edinburgh or in UK have asked me, spotting a slightly different accent, so what do you do for a living? And I think it's a very horrible, tricky question with many questions within, no? Judgmental, how you say that? Judging.
Judgmental. Judgmental.
I really feel like that, and the film really, or that question and this film creates a triangle with another film that we showed recently, the Laura Carreira's Red Hill, where the story of this old miner doing shifts, and really all those films and all those questions for me is like how important this job in our lives, no? How it shapes who we are, like when we start working as a plumber or as a cultural manager or whatever in your 25, 28, how your personality, your perception, the rest of the people.
Yes. Well, most of us spend 40 years or more working in our lives, and I guess it's important that you can spend so much of that time doing something you like. And I think that those who find a way to earn their living doing something they like, or they feel strong about it, they are privileged. There's so many people who has this double life. No, we both have jobs that we like and pay the bills, but then we do CinemaAttic, and clearly something missing from our other life that we need to complement with this one. I guess that's the modern man. I have here running the Zoom meeting 2 people who want to join us, just to tell them that yes, hold on a second, well, just 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I want to take the chance as well to say, CinemaAttic is a community interest company, it's not for profit. What we do is mostly volunteer, and we feel really passionate about what we are doing, giving this opportunity to films that the other ways don't get seen by the bigger audience. If you like it, if you think we are doing something right, visit our networks, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, our website, our newsletter, join in, share the love, don't keep us a secret, and enjoy it and watch the films. I think this collection we're putting, Cuarentena shorts in our website, is a, I wouldn't like to say it's a complete list, because surely we are missing lots of films that are great, but certainly it's a few hours a day, I guess. You remember when we were toying with the idea of doing a 24-hour marathon,
an all-nighter
of Spanish short films in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
It's almost lucky that the pandemic stopped it.
In a way, yeah. How many people will have joined us to that all-nighter? Eh? How many people out there listening us will have spent the whole night watching Spanish short films with us?
Like a sociological experiment, no? How you come in and how you get out. We have we have 4 more films in this program, but 3 of them will be presented by the directors. The one we couldn't get was Nely Reguera and this amazing film called Pablo. Pablo is the story of somebody in prison. Pablo is in prison and is getting a visit from his father and his sister. And there's something really there indicated more than, it doesn't go main in the story, but it's underpinning everything. Is the father starts the film looking after a scar he has in his stomach. Something has happened to him. He suffered an attack. And by comments by for Pablo's sister, we get to believe that was Pablo, who actually, we don't know the circumstances, provoked that injury in his father. But then they get back. You remember we put this in a collection of short films that we call Reconciliation. And it was the difficulties of overcoming a crisis, overcoming a big accident, a big pandemic, a big war, and how you get to the other side to recover a normality, a relationship that you know, circumstances that you were accustomed before this, how you get back to it. And then it's great, it's strong, how slowly from a rejection from one to the other, eventually they get back to something they cannot feel cold about it, they cannot keep the distance. The thing, it's not a spoiler when I say this is chess. Playing chess is something that is really much uniting the family, but it's Pablo and his father, the ones who took chess farther than his sister or his mother. And they talk about it, and they talk about how people in jail play chess, and apparently there are a couple of guys that are worse, the others don't know how to play.
No. And Nely has that because then she did her first feature, Maria y los demás. And she's great, and many other, particularly the family is important in Spain, but all over the world. Family in cinema is incredibly important, and she does so well capture those moments of silence in a family that are full of meaning, gazes, small details. This film, Pablo, happens before people start to talk about a Catalan New Wave, led mainly by women filmmakers like Clara Roquet, Carla Simón, Belén Funes, and all this generation of great filmmakers. And Nely Reguera, this film is kind of previous to Las Hijas de Ágata. I can't remember, and Summer 1993, and all this new Catalan cinema. And it's previous, but is in a way, you know, is marking all the elements of what is going to be that style of cinema.
That's fantastic. Yes, well, we showed it here a while ago, and it's been a pleasure to watch it again. Nely should be one of the guests that really would like to bring over. In the normal days, when you could fly and mingle with people in public places, We love that. We spend any penny Cinematic has bringing directors who consider doing things amazingly well, or and bringing them over and give them a bit of a different treatment that when they use in the big festivals, where they kind of send a letter with instructions of where and when they have to be.
It will happen again.
Yes, it will. And certainly not the only one, but one of the biggest olives. I have
Look at the
Betty's.
Zoom.
I have Betty's here, which is better. So we bring them over and we show them around. Sometimes we abuse them. I remember when Alberto Vázquez came the first time, we got him like 5 or 6 events in 4 days, and he enjoyed them. It was like a marathon. I think one of the ones that worked out very well is when Asier Altuna came over with Xavier Marrades 2 years ago, and we had the chance to do the events, to present a mama, and also to travel around Scotland. Well, not Scotland as a whole, but around Edinburgh. We went out, and we had such a couple of amazing days. So it's great to have him here today. If you are okay, Alberto, I'll get them in.
I'm looking forward to speak with Asier again. Yes.
We have Claudia Torralba as well doing the interpretation from Euskera. And everything working fine. They will be with us in no time. So that's Asier. How you doing? And Claudia.
Hola.
Hola, Asier. Kaixo.
Kaixo.
Claudia.
Kaixo. Arratsaldeon.
We're gonna have, this is gonna be a new level of Cinematic and history of Zoom. We're gonna be translating from Euskera to English today.
So well, it's great to have us here. I was talking about the few days you spent with us a couple of years ago, presenting a mama and well, participating on the Basque Spring. And well, as here, you have quite a long trajectory now. Started in the video school, film video school on Andoain, trained in Venezuela. You work with big names of the film industry in the Basque Country, in Spain as well. And then you have a list of key short films that have been all over the place. Amama was great as a feature. We watched Danza, which is Termosnal. I watched Tinchua behind it. And it's a pleasure to see you again, man. So to have you around with us. How are you?
Fine, thanks. With white wine.
Yes.
Salud.
Salud, osasuna. Euskera hitz egingo dira zuzenean edo zela egingo dugu.
Bai.
Bueno, nago etxean sartuta, baina lanean atope, ez? Harrapatu nau historia guztionek proiektu bat prestatzen, eta, bueno, ez dakit oso ongi nola, hemendik aurrera nola egingo dugun zinea, ez dakit rodajeak eta nola aldatuko diran, baina, bueno, lanean harrapatu nau, ez? Eta, bueno, kortoi begiratuz, bueno, beti gustatu izatere, naiz eta luzemetraiak egin, dokumentalak egin, eta beti, bueno, historia motzak kontatzea. Eta azkenean dena da zinea, ez? Azkenean zinea maite dut, eta hori da gauzari politena, ez?
So this pandemic arrived when I was working in a new project. I'm stuck at home as the rest of us, but I'm working. I do have a lot of work. In fact, we don't really know if this pandemic is going to bring us a new way to make cinema, but the fact is that I'm working on a new project. With regards to short films, I have always loved them. I do like working on feature films and documentaries, but short films are special for me. And at the end of the day, we can't forget that all of them are cinema. So that's what I do. That's what I love. And all it's about cinema.
Exactly. And really talking about Asier Altuna is talking about Spain level is an unmissable filmmaker for the last decade because since, you know, Church, the beginning, Topeka, so many short films, up to, I think Rafa speak for both, one of our most favorite films of Spanish contemporary cinema, which is Amama, but it's even more relevant probably for Basque country and Basque people, because in your films, Asier, sometimes it feels it's like a Basque Galdós. You've been depicting all layers of Basque society, from public spaces to private, from church and the baserri, no, to Bertsolari and the tradition of the Bertsolaris, to Amama and the house. So does it feel, you know, is intentional or is something less planned?
Ez dakit, nik egiten dudana da zinea barrutik ateratzen zaidana, ez? Berez, nik baserri batean jaioa naiz, ez nik eta ez nire familiak, nire gurasoak imaginatuko ni zinegile bihurtuko nintzela, ez? Eta bai oso gertutik somatu dut beti gure kultura eta gure tradizioak, eta baserrian jaiotzeaz, hortik asko dauko, ez? Eta berez, ez dakit, barrutik eta intuizioki egiten doz zinea, ez? Orduan, bai hasi nintzanean ja kortuak egiten eta pixkate ze kontatu pentsatzen, barrutik ateratzen zaidan zerbait da. Eta bai esan lehiket korto hauek, bai Artalde, Txotx, Topeka eta guzti hauek oso nire ezagutzen dudan mundu batetaz ari naizela hitz egiten. Eta, kasu ja Amama pelikulan ere ez. Eta baita daukate behar bat, sentitzen dut behar bat, kontatzeko gure historian eta gure hizkuntzan, ez? Eta hortik abiatu nintzen. Eta, asko aldatu dira oin dela 15 urtetik hona gauzak, ja Euskal Zinea oso zabaldua dago munduan, eta, rekonozimentu txiki bat badakaia. Eta alde horretatik, harro sentitzen naiz, eta dauka suertia zinea egiten jarraitzen ari naizela, ez? Eta hori gauza polita da.
I have always tried to express all the things I feel inside of me. It's something that is found in the very deep of my heart. I was born in a baserri or in a farm in the rural world, so this is something which is a part of me. No one thought I was going to get to be a director, not even me. So culture and tradition is something that is very linked to me. It's part of my personality, and I always try to communicate and to express all these things that I find inside of me. I always work following my intuition. So when I work on short films, I always try to talk about something I really know about, which is in this case the Basque tradition and our history. This is something that happened in the short films that we have mentioned, for example, Artalde, Church, and Topeka, but also in Amama, which is a feature film. And I always feel a need to express our history, our story, and to do it in our language. So this is why all my work is around the Basque world and the Basque language. Fortunately, things have changed a lot in the last 15 years, and now the Basque cinema is very well known all around the world. So I think I am very lucky to keep working on this, and I will continue to do it.
I hope so.
Yeah.
So, Asier, you were saying at the beginning that the quarantine, you're taking it. Some of the directors we talk say that they are working, taking the chance that they have to be at home to finish all those projects that were lingering around. But some others are saying that they can concentrate at home for different circumstances, because they don't like it being locked in the flat, or because there's too many people where they live.
Yeah.
And I know you have a beautiful family.
Yeah.
But are you managing to get anything done?
Nik uste dut azkenean proiektu honen, da proiektu berri bat fikziozko pelikula batena. Aspalditik ja daramagu denbora bat ja lan egiten berakin, eta justo dare diru laguntza batzuk mediakoak martxoan bukatzen direnak, eta harrapatu gaitu momentu horretan, ez? Orduan, bueno, ja konfinamendu hasia baino lehen, ja lanian itzan eta izan da jarripen bat, ez? Ez dakit zergatik, baina bai konzentratu nahi. Egia esan, sekula baino lan gehiago egin dut, ez? Ibili naiz oso konzentratua, sartua, gidoia idazten eta tratamendua, eta, bueno, azkenean, helburu badakasunean igual erresagoa da, ez? Horrelako zerbait egitea. Aldi berean, beste proiektu batzuk ere izan ditut, eta eukide suertea, atera naizela rodatzera kanpora, ez? Nago proiektu bat egiten dokumental batena, Cristina Iglesias artistaren obra berria Donostian egingo duena, Santa Clara uhartean egingo duena, hori jarraipen bat eta dokumental bat egiteko intentzioa dugu, eta baita aukera ateratzeko grabatzera kanpora, ez? Eta horrek ere laguntzen du, ez? Bueno, hori.
So I was working in a new project, but at the same time we had already worked on it for a long time, and it was a matter of time that we had to apply for funding from media at midday. So at the beginning of the lockdown, we were already very focused on working on that, and it was just the continuation of what we had already started before the lockdown. Fortunately, I was able to concentrate and I'm working more than ever. I have been writing the script, and I think I have really benefited from all this time at home. I think it's easier to get things done when we have a specific goal, and it was easier for me this time to work under pressure and at home, of course. At the same time, we were working in other projects, and we had the chance to film outside before getting locked down at home. And we are filming a documentary that we projected in Santa Clara and San Sebastian. And I think this has been a very good time for me to work, and I'm really taking advantage of this time at home.
Eta uste gauzatxoa nahi gehitu, uste egongo dala hemendik hilabete batzutara proiektu pilo bat, porque jende guztia uste dagoela etxean sartuta idazten. Egongo dira gidoi pilo bat, egongo da stok bat oso importantea, hemendik gutxira.
I'd like to add that I think in the following months we will have a lot of work, because people are stuck at home but writing and working a lot on scripts. So I think we will have a very important stock of scripts in the following months.
Hey, look, we were saying, an Italian friend was saying that we're going to have a lot of films about filmmakers closed at home and trying to find inspiration in the house, no? Stories about being in lockdown. Asier,
yeah,
you move and... Go.
Sorry. Yeah.
No.
Go.
I was going to ask you, Asier, because you move so well. Your last film that we haven't seen yet, Agur Etxebeste, second part of a milestone in Basque comedy and of past successes in box office, Aupa Etxebeste. But you move from that type of comedy, maybe for wider publics, to maybe a more personal, or cine de autor, or cinema, if you want to say, and documentary. And I remember recently reading Bong Joon-ho, the guy from Parasite, saying that when he was shooting Okja, his previous film for Netflix with a massive budget technology, he was obsessed and already thinking on Parasite, how he was going to shoot, doing the storyboard. Does this happen to you? Do you love all those versions of Asier Altuna, the comedy, the more intimate or personal stories, the documentary, one more than other? Does it happen to you that you manage projects simultaneously, or that you feel more personal to one of those Asiers?
Ja, bueno, nik uste dute daukatela suerte bat dela zinea egitetik bizi naizela. Hori lehenengo gauza importantea, ez? Da ofizio bat asko maite dudana, asko ematen didana, eta benetan betetzen nagoena, ez? Eta alde horretatik, daka suertia, bai kasu honetan Agurretxe beste bera, ez? Da pelikula bat nik berez ez nuela sekula egingo, baina, bueno, etorri zian ekoizetxe batetik, eskatuz, zuzenduko genuen bigarren parte hori, ez? Aupa Etxebesteren bigarren partea. Bueno, azkenean zinea egiten zaude, igual ez da pelikula bat sekula egingo nuena, baina, bueno, gustora egiten dut, ez? Eta komedia egitean ikuste gauza importantea dela, barra egitea behar degulako, ez? Beharra dauko, barra egiteko behar importante bat dauko. Horren ondoren, beste pelikula bat indut, eta aurten uste estrenatuko degula, eta da dokumental bat Arzak, Juan Mari Arzak kosineruari buruz egin dugu dokumental oso polit bat. Eta hori ere bai da enkargu bat, ez? Beste produktora bat etorri izan ere gana, eskatzera zuzenduko nuen pelikula hori. Suerte bada azkenean, ez? Zinea egitetik bizitzea. Baina gero dazkat beste pelikula batzuk, Mama esaleik kasu, edo orain prestatzen ari naizen pelikula berri hau, digala oso barrukoak, oso barrutik ateratzen zaidanak, eta, bueno, nereak egingo ditudanak, eta benetan, gustora egingo duna. Baina, azkenean, bueno, bizitzeko igual egin behar ditu beste pelikula batzuk bitartean, ez? Eta denetan gustora ibiltzen naiz, ez?
I am very lucky because I really work on what I like. I'm able to make the ends meet with this. We were talking previously about the fact that sometimes we work on what we really like and we can really pay the bills with this job. And this is my situation. I love my job. I get a lot of satisfaction from it. And I feel very lucky. Agurretxe Beste is a film that at the beginning, it wasn't planned. I didn't really expect to direct a second part, but someone asked us to do it, and it's work at the end of the day. So even if it's not something that was planned from the very beginning, it's a good thing to do, and I'm very involved on that project. I think, on the other hand, that making comedy is very important because we all need to laugh. So I really appreciate all these projects, even if they were not planned from the very beginning. We are working on another film. I think it will be premiered this year. It's about the Basque chef Juan Mari Arzak. It's a documentary about his life, and this was something that was commanded by someone else too. If we talk about Amama or Artalde, for example, the short film we're talking about today, I think they are films that are coming out from my inside world, from my previous knowledge, from my wish to communicate my internal thoughts. But I'm very happy because the other ones, the comedies and all this work, which are commanded by other people, also make me make cinema. And I'm very lucky because I'm able to live from what I really like to do.
That's great.
That's great. When we spoke the other day, Asier, you told me about another documentary you're doing about a famous Basque artist. You want to talk about that as well?
Yes. Bueno, justo nago Cristina Iglesias da eskultore bat mundu mailan oso rekonozitua dagoena. Eta bere azken proiektua da proiektu bat oso potentea, esaten du berak dala bere bizitzako proiekturik importantena. Eta Santa Clara uhartean, Donostiko Santa Clara uhartean, bertako itsas argiaren etxean egingo du instalazio potolo bat, ez? Oso berezia, izango da obra oso importantea. Eta, bueno, gonbidapena jaso gendun, horri buruz dokumental bat egiteko, beste enkargu bat, beste suerte bat, jasotzen dudana. Eta benetan da proiektu bat oso berezia eta nirekin ere duena zerikusi asko, ez? Azkenean natura eta hiriaren, nire pelikuletan Amaman bertan badago, ez dakit, hiria eta naturen arteko txoke hori, eta, historia honetan ere horrelako zerbait gertatzen da. Eta benetan, da proiektu bat ematen didan aukera kamarakin joateko natura grabatzera, eta oso pozik nagoela, ez, rodatzen.
We are working on another documentary film. This one is about Cristina Iglesias, which is a very famous Basque sculptor. She's working on a very big project right now. She says it's the most important project of her life. So she's going to make an installation in the lighthouse of the Santa Clara Island. And we were asked to record a documentary about her life that will go hand in hand with her project. It's a project that is very special for me, and I think it's closely related to what I do, because we have seen in different films, for example, in Amama, that I really liked, talking about the relationship between nature and city and the clash between them very often. So I think it's something which has a lot of do to me with me. It's very similar to some of the issues I have already addressed in some of my films, and I have had the opportunity to go with my camera and record nature in life. So I'm very happy with this project.
Yes, and gosh, we could talk about festivals, we could talk about much more things, Asier, but we would like to do it in person when this is all over.
Me too, yeah.
With a whiskey, with punk, if possible, like those days when you were here. But again, from someone that has done Bertsolari, Amama, and Aupa, Echeveste, it's always exciting to see what's coming next and to hear about all this wide range of projects that you're working on. It's really exciting, and we're really hoping to see them soon and to have a reason to back.
I have very, very good memories to Edinburgh. I want to say thank you for Claudia. It's the luxury to have this person translating me. Thank you.
Claudia.
You're welcome.
Agur.
Eskerrik asko, Asier.
Hurrengo arte.
Ondo pasa.
Claudia, you stay.
Yeah, I'll stay with you. Don't worry.
That was good.
Excellent. Was great. Alberto and Claudia, I'm going to leave you to hold the fort because I ran out of beer and I can possibly think on this.
Rafa without beer is dangerous.
2 seconds because Jaione is on the waiting room. I'm going to leave her there until I get a drink.
Okay. I'll do a short intro to Jaione, our next guest. Jaione was born in San Sebastian in 1983, studied audiovisual communication in Madrid, film direction in Prague, art direction at film school in Munich, lived several years in Berlin, where she worked in the art department of several film productions. In 2010, she moved back to Galicia, to Santiago de Compostela, where she now resides and works, and is one of the leading voices of the Novo Cinema Galego movement. In 2011, she founded the production company Snatu Cinema. She's worked as scriptwriter, producer, art director on films of international prestige, and in her own projects, many great experimental short films, including Nimbos, Prova de Auxiliade, and Rapa das Bestas. There is the film in the program this week that we're going to talk particularly about. Jaione released her first feature film, Arima. Is her first feature film that premiered in Seville, and he won an award there. In Márgenes, where he won awards. So very promising career. Jaione, I was just doing an intro. Hola. Buenos días.
Hola, Jaione.
¿Qué tal?
Todo bien, how are you?
Muy bien, estoy aquí con el solecito, que por suerte hoy en Santiago de Compostela hace sol, que no, vamos, es valioso, digamos. Y nada, aquí en la galería.
Claudia.
I'm very well. I'm profiting the sun. I'm here in the balcony. It's not very often sunny here in Santiago, so it's very appreciated. And I'm just enjoying the sun and meeting you.
Yeah, and it's probably the first time, Jaione, because we've been doing this for 5 weeks, and every time we've been doing this with Barcelona or Madrid, it was really sunny here, and it was raining or windy or gray in Spain. So it's back to normal, gray here, sunny in Spain.
Sí, son días extraños para todo.
Sí. I guess my first question starts from the end. in a way. Jaione, Arima was doing all the festival circuit. I don't know if this crisis in some way paralyzed or stopped plans, festivals that were going to happen.
Sí, realmente ha sido como un paro muy fuerte en la distribución, en una fase además que para una película como esta es muy valioso, que es cuando empiezas en las salas que le llaman non-theatricals, ¿no? En lo que son filmotecas, cineclubs, pues digamos no comerciales, porque ya pasó su fase comercial, por suerte no me pilló justo la fase comercial, que eso también habría sido pues aún peor, pero sí que es verdad que me ha parado como el circuito, ¿no? Natural de la película.
Yes, there has been a very important clash on the distribution of the film. Fortunately, this didn't happen while the commercial phase of the distribution was taking place, but it happened when we were passing into the non-commercial phase, and this is quite important for us, especially for this type of films, but it could have been worse, so it's not that bad. Anyway, the natural circuit of the film has been stopped.
Yes, both your films, we know, Rapa, Bestas, and Arima, have done incredibly well. I mean, we met the Edinburgh Film Festival. What does that mean? I mean, apart of the pandemic and the Cuarentena, does it? Do you get more offers, as Asier was saying a bit ago, or what are you working on these days?
Bueno, estaba trabajando ahora, justo la pandemia estalló cuando yo estaba en San Sebastián, en una residencia que se llama Ikusmira Berriak, que la lleva el Festival de San Sebastián, Tabacalera y la Cinescola. Es una colaboración entre los tres y la verdad que es un lujo de residencia y estábamos justo en mitad, ¿no? Todos los residentes trabajando, bueno, en mitad, casi comenzando, y estalló esto, ¿no? Y ahí estaba como desarrollando mi próximo largometraje, que es con el que me presenté en un estado como muy embrionario y estaba como profundizando en él, ¿no? Como empezando un poco a constelar todo, porque sí que es verdad que justo era como que se acababa un proceso de Arima que ha sido muy largo, ¿no? Podríamos decir que casi una década, sin el casi, y de repente pues cerrar una fase tan intensa de ese primer proyecto y justo abrirla con el siguiente era como un momento muy dorado, ¿no? Y bueno, en ese sentido pues se tuvo que posponer la residencia y ya me vine a Galicia, donde estoy de alguna manera aprovechando como este tiempo dilatado y suspendido, ¿no? En el que parece que el mundo entero también se ha paralizado y es una sensación también popular que dilata el tiempo. Bueno, ya no sé qué decirte porque a veces se encoge también de manera... bueno, la cosa es que he aprovechado un poco para profundizar en la parte de guión, ¿no? De parte de creación más de este próximo proyecto. De largo, de ficción también.
When this pandemic started, I was in San Sebastian. I was doing a stage in a project which is called Ikusmira Berriak, which is coordinated by the San Sebastian Film Festival, the Cinema School, and Tabacalera. And we were at the very beginning of the project. So I was kind of getting into it, getting to organize and to really visualize all the project I was trying to do. But the pandemic arrived and it was quite a shock. I had already finished a very long way with Arima, almost 10 years. So it was a time to close the phase and to start a new one with a new project. So it was like a dreamt moment for me, something I had been waiting for a long time. And I had to stop it and just wait. I'm back in Galicia now. I'm working at home. I really taken advantage of the time at home because now we have a different perception of the time. Sometimes we think it's longer than it really is, and sometimes we find it's shorter. So it's a quite strange situation for me, but I can really say that I'm taking advantage of it. I'm working now on this new film, and I'm especially working on the script.
Mm-hmm. At least it was a time for change, a time for spring or for blossoming, and we don't have it. Somehow we've been deprived from having a blossom or a spring, but we can see it from the window. taking it back to Rapa das Bestas, maybe a film that we love for so many formal and content reasons. Maybe we could start from the aspect of the relationship between animals and men, particularly animals and humans in cinema. I think in the last 2 months, Rafa and I, we've been watching a lot of films on this, from rewatching Bresson, Alazar Baltasar, to Pietro Marcello, Bella e Perduta, to Oliver Lasche, Fire Will Come, and your film included in that. But it approaches the issue in a very different way. Some of these films with the camera and try to feel or find a soul in the animal that we often forget about. Tell us a bit more about how you approach this issue in your film that is a bit more brutal perspective.
Sí. Bueno, luego tengo otras piezas cortas que no son tan brutales, ¿no? Como puede ser Rapa das Bestas. Sí que es verdad que mi contacto con este interés por el animal surge, yo creo, a raíz de que, bueno, mi padre es peruano y tuve la suerte desde jovencita de poder ir a la selva en repetidas ocasiones, ¿no? Y en esas incursiones a la selva encontré unas sensaciones muy, muy potentes, ¿no? Durmiendo en medio de la selva con esa gasa, ¿no? Para que los mosquitos no te picaran, pero escuchando como esa gran orquesta, ¿no? Porque lo que menos te encuentras en la selva es silencio, es realmente un lugar de mucho ruido y de muchísimos, ¿no? Ruidos animales que te devuelven algo muy, muy potente. Y a mí personalmente me llevaron a sentir, no sé, algo, no sé, que me tocó profundamente. Y desde entonces creo que he tenido bastante interés en observar al animal, pero también observar al ser humano mal, ¿no? Porque hay algo como que te sosiega, que te perdona, ¿no? Que también un poco somos un animal moral y de alguna manera también esa moral tiene como su doble cara, ¿no? Y también nos hace sentir como más culpables, ¿no? Y también esta idea judeocristiana de la culpabilidad y tal. Hay algo en el contacto con el animal, ¿no? Que te hace perdonarte de alguna manera, ¿no? Te acepta en algo más allá de esa justicia moral. Y en ese sentido siempre me ha gustado observar este hombre animal y también observarle desde el ego, ¿no? Que es algo muy particular del hombre. Y ahí, bueno, hay algo en lo que trabajo un poco las piezas. Y paro porque la pobre tiene que traducir mucho, disculpa.
I have also worked in other films and short films with animals, but I think they are not as brutal as this one, the one we are talking about. I think my interest in animals comes from my dad, because my dad is Peruvian and I had the opportunity to get into the jungle several times. So I was able to capture very strong films coming from all this environment. For example, at night when we were sleeping, we could hear the great orchestra of all the animals, because you can't really find silence in the jungle. You find all these animals, and all this really, really touched me. And I think that's the origin of my interest on animals. The thing is, I do not only like observing animals, but also human beings as animals. This is very interesting because human beings have moral, and we find a way to forgive ourselves and to calm down our stress and our feelings by accepting that we do have this moral. It's something that goes farther than the justice moral I have mentioned, and I really, really liked, I have also always liked observing this man-animal combination from the ego, which is a very particular point of view.
Muy bien.
Yes, and Jaione, your film often happens that makes you really feel in a very intense way about another film. In this case, your film makes us think a lot on a film that maybe you have seen it did very well in the festival circuit last year. There is Elena López Riera, Los que desean. Another film about dudes, guys, laddies, old, young, from all generations, gathering, escaping from home, basically, to create this tradition, weird, strange, that you watch from a bit of distance and you can't help judge, but it's this setup of a tradition of, whether it's, in this case, colombicultura and painting pigeons, to, in the case of Rapa das Bestas, this brutal tradition. of dancing and really this huge contact with animals. But I don't know what you think about that, about this way of maybe men to set up traditions and find.
Sí, creo que en Rapa das Bestas es uno de los... Creo que Rapa das Bestas intenta establecer bastantes preguntas, no tanto señalar con fuerza, ¿no?, el posicionamiento. Y en esas preguntas sí se pregunta sobre aquello que es tradición, aquello que se ve heredado, ¿no?, de adultos a niños para que se conviertan en adultos, lo pasan a los niños, cadena atávica, ¿no? Y de alguna manera sí que se lo pregunta, ¿no? Porque hay algo ahí que se vuelve tradición y que se fortalece más allá casi ya de, o sea, llegas a no poder juzgarlo porque pues, se convierte en algo, ¿no?, que no puede ser cuestionado casi, ¿no? Y bueno, sí que creo que es una reflexión que plantea, una pregunta que plantea la película, y también creo que se traslada en Arima, ¿no? Es una de las cuestiones que también se traslada luego a otras películas, que es la pregunta un poco de lo que heredamos, ¿no? De lo que es aquello que se va pasando transgeneracionalmente y cuando, bueno, y que hay que cuestionarse, ¿no?, esa cadena también.
I think Rapa das Bestas is a film that really suggests many questions instead of signaling and criticizing this tradition. It really questions about the tradition, the inherited culture, about the atavic chain which goes from generation to generation, and it really becomes something that you can't really judge, you can't really question because of all this tradition. And it's, I think, the same issue with the one which is addressed in Arima, and the question basically is what do we inherit and what do we transmit generation by generation. So that's the question we need to propose following these films.
See, the Rapa das Bestas is that kind of tradition that has been there for many, many years, whereas I really don't think our ancestors were playing with pigeons, trying to judge which one seduced better, the female pigeon, so it wins the competition. I think the point of view is completely different.
And yet, Rafa, to follow on your, I find poetry something fucked up, maybe from my side, but I find poetry in both.
No, yes. I mean, it's a very strong film, La Roperriera, but I think she just kind of, without wanting to judge, is putting the point of view of what do you think about this, and it's a different answer for one film on the other. So, Jaione, it's great to have you here. It's fantastic to have the chance to talk to you. And I remember when we briefly talked in the Edinburgh Film Festival, but I was present when your film was shown and in the Q&A afterwards. And I don't remember if it was in the Q&A or in our conversation afterwards, but you told me, or you said the film Rapa das Bestas, you film it from the inside, from the ring. You are not filming it from the tourist.
Sorry, can you repeat? Because estaba justo sonando el teléfono, disculpa.
Mom was calling.
Sí.
Yes.
Disculpa, si me puedes volver a repetir, disculpa.
No, I don't remember it was in the Q&A or in the chat afterwards. So you mentioned that the film is made from the inside of the ring. So the camera, is it you filming it?
Sí, realmente fue muy intenso, ¿no? Y creo que aparte la película se abastece de esto, ¿no? Para mí la cámara en mano es algo que he utilizado en toda mi obra hasta ahora, y es algo que disfruto mucho porque siento que traslada mucho como el temperamento, el estado de ánimo de la persona que está como llevando la cámara. Y en el caso de Rapa das Bestas, como esa intensidad, ¿no? Y cuando pude rodar en lo que es el curro al lado de los caballos, claro, hay un cierto miedo que se traslada, un cierto terror, ¿no? Porque en el fondo te sientes bajo peligro de muerte, porque realmente están todos los caballos alrededor y normalmente hay fotógrafos que tiran como su foto y se retiran, ¿no? porque hay que estar atento al entorno, pero con una cámara tú cada plano, cada frame que iba pasando tenías que saber que era valioso porque te la estabas jugando un poco, ¿no? Entonces había algo de tensión ahí que se generaba, que aparte es, bueno, también algo seductor a la hora, ¿no? de poder rodar porque se vuelve como muy vital, que se traslada, ¿no? Que la cámara tiembla de alguna manera y para mí era importante esto.
Yeah, but that connects directly as well with the black and white. And the whole thing has this Salgado feeling that I've been there. I've been in that mine for 6 months before I took my first picture.
Yeah. Creo que tiene que traducir Claudia. Sí,
sorry.
If you want our guests to understand it, yes, I filmed it with my camera in my hand. I think it was a very intense experience, but I think all this tension is also very good resource for the film. I have used the camera in my hand in all my works, and I really, really enjoy it because you can, by doing this, transmit your own mood when you are recording and using this camera, and you really transmit something other way wouldn't be possible to transmit, especially when you are in El Curro, which is the space in which all these horses are gathered. You feel the fear. You feel really, really anxious. The risk is real, and many of the photographers and the people who are taking images there just take a photo and go out because it's really risky. But I knew that every single frame I was taking was very important for the film. So I think my anguish and my tension was also transmitted into the film. And I think the camera really trembles in reality, and this is a very important and powerful feeling for the viewer too.
Sí, hablabas de blanco y negro, ¿no? Sí.
Yes, I would say that this connects to the brutality of the closeness of the activity of the beasts, the rapadas bestas. It's not talking about chihuahuas, but wild horses. And you mentioned about the risks of filming so close to the animals and the action. But I was telling you that crowd rolls into the black and white and the whole way that the film is being edited. And I wonder if, A, you were thinking on black and white when you started the film, and B, how other parts of the film come to be. Like the sound is very important in this film.
Totally.
Sorry, Alberto, am I stealing one of your questions?
No. Sound is brutal in this film as well.
Sí, el blanco y negro era importante sobre todo para justamente por esta idea de lo atávico. ¿No? Hablábamos antes de esta idea de tradición, ¿no? Algo que pudiera confundir una imagen casi como hecha hace 30 años pero en la actualidad, ¿no? Entonces como que tienes una sensación de pasado pero en el fondo vas viendo elementos que te van llevando al presente, ¿no? Y entonces en esta confusión también me interesaba cómo trabajar. Sí que esta cámara en mano, de nuevo, intentaba ser también muy dancística, ¿no? En ese sentido ir con el movimiento, ¿no? Y tener volumen. Y eso eran ideas como que el blanco y negro apoyaba también.
Black and white was very important from the very beginning, just because of the atavic idea we were mentioning before, the tradition and all this that we inherit. I really wanted to mix up these images so that we could feel on the one hand that we were watching something that happened 30 years ago, but at the same time we get elements that tell us that it's something that's being filmed in the present time. So this kind of mixture of elements was important for me with regards to the tradition. And on the other hand, I wanted to dance and I wanted to accompany the movement, and I wanted somehow to give some volume to the film. So the black and white underpins very well all these ideas.
Well, with Jaione, all the good things have to end as well. The bad things end as well.
Yeah, we had, no? I mean, we have here questions about Super 8, about sound, about physicality, about the film form, about Valdelomar, but we will have to persuade Dolores and Agadik when the world is back to normal, because Arima is one of the top of the list films we would like to bring next season. and we can ask you all these questions in person, hopefully.
And bring you in
I hope
properly.
so.
Bring you into Edinburgh properly. We disagree 100% with the Edinburgh Film Festival, how they manage the guests. It's no way. And from here I say it in public.
Thanks for joining, Jaione.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias también, Claudia.
De
Thank you.
nada, encantada.
Thank you, Claudia, because you're leaving now as
You're
well.
welcome. Yeah, I'm leaving. Thank you
I
very much.
got a message
Have
from
a-
Mom saying that she has to finish.
Have a lovely Sunday.
You too. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Gracias.
Thank you. Adiós.
Adiós. Ay.
Vale, tenemos a Pedro esperando para entrar.
Bueno,
¿Lo hacemos y haces la introducción o quieres hacerla?
perfecto. Voy haciendo la introducción y vete metiendo a Pedro si quieres. Qué guay.
Perfect.
What a lineup today, Rafa. Right, Pedro Collantes, our next guest. We are really thrilled with everyone. We had Asier Altuna today. We said that it's basic to understand Spanish independent cinema in the 2000s. I think Pedro Collantes is an absolutely essential filmmaker to understand Spanish independent cinema in the 2010s, since Life in a Minute in 2011. Born in Madrid, Pedro studied a master's in Netherlands Film Academy in Amsterdam. He worked as an editor in Spain, Norway, Belgium. Is one of the most international Spanish short filmmaker, if that is a thing. As a writer and director, Pedro short films have screened in some of the top festivals in the world, including Rotterdam, Montreal, Chicago, usually in Clermont-Ferrand, in Tokyo, in Palm Springs. Is one of the very few Spanish filmmakers, maybe we touch later on this, that has been invited by the American Academy to take part with people like Bárbara Goenaga or Rosy de Palma or Natalia de Molina or Carlos Bardem or Javier Cámara, and Pedro Collantes is amongst them. He was developing, I mean, we can talk about films probably you've seen, the winner film in week one, that was a Skipper, and everyone loved it. In this week, we have Serori, but of Ice, Hourglass, Nothing Stranger, so many Atos Arsen, so many vital short films to understand this side of the Spanish industry. Welcome, Pedro. I don't know if you can hear us, if you're already here.
I think he can hear us, but we cannot see him.
Okay.
Hello.
Wait a bit.
Pedro.
Hola, Pedro.
Hi.
Hola,
Hello.
hola.
Hello, guys.
Salud.
How are you?
Good. Hey, salud. I have a vermouth with me here.
There you go.
Welcome,
There you go. Pedro, we were doing a very crazy introduction because really, when we started doing this, so Rafa and I took over CinemaAttic about, 5-6 years ago, and we started to say, right, let's bring all the film heroes that we have. Ana Solanas and Mark Riva, Los Alenda, Isa Erguera, Asier Altuna, and maybe there are a couple left, and one of them is you. So we hope that the world will be normal eventually, and you can come. But it's true. It's one of the few heroes that is left to bring to CinemaAttic.
A few, come on, Alberto. But yes, for definite, Pedro Collantes is one of them. I don't know. I'm going to ask the first question. But
Well, let me just say that I would love to go. So as soon as we are allowed to travel again, whenever you guys want to bring me, I'll be super happy to be there with you guys.
Yes. Yeah. I was telling the same to Asier, and I think we touched on this last week. Some of the directors are working a lot during the Cuarentena. Some others can concentrate for different reasons, not liking being locked or being locked with too many people around. But for you, looking at your production, it must come as a holiday. I mean, you are the busiest filmmaker editor in Spain for definite, no?
Well, it has been a bit hectic the last year or year and a half, actually. So it was I mean, it was very strange because I was actually shooting. I was in the middle of shooting my first feature, so we had to stop the shooting when we had 2 more days to shoot that we couldn't complete. We had to postpone it. And so it's been really hectic all the period before that with the shooting and everything that comes before the shooting with the pre-production, etc. And all of a sudden it was like from one day to the next, isolation, like social distance and quarantine. So it was very, very extreme change, shift. Yeah.
Yes.
And
When you look to talk about your last work, the first feature is called El Arte de Volver.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's
it's already filmed, but you're in the studio now making the film.
Well, we were shooting, and it's we still had 2 more days, as I said. So we need to complete it whenever we are allowed to shoot again, whenever we can arrange it again.
Very soon.
Yeah, but so meanwhile, this quarantine, I've been advancing on the edit because it was, of course, unfortunate that the pandemic and that we had to stop, but within the unfortunate circumstances, we were, let's say, lucky that at least we could shoot most of the film. So at least I've been advancing on the editing part of it while locked at home. It would have been much harder if we couldn't even start a shoot. It would have been very frustrating. So
it sounds, Pedro, really interesting, no? To start the edit with, say, 90% or 85% of the material and leaving a 10% just a secret. Obviously, there is a plan and where you're going to shoot those 2 days left. But it sounds, from an editor point of view as well, like an interesting challenge to approach. But to go to Serori, the film that we have this week in the program, I think it's a film that is very fun to you. I think particularly the shooting. I don't know if you could tell us a bit more about the shooting of Serori and what is Serori for you today, a few years back.
I have great memories of making Serori. Actually, it's probably the shooting that I enjoyed all of them. In all of them, you enjoy and you suffer. But Serori was maybe just joy. It was very. It was only 1 day shoot, so it was very short. But the whole process it was my first time in Japan, and it was something that kind of it was half improvised in a way, in the way that I was studying the master in the Netherlands at the Netherlands Film Academy, and I had a project that I was gonna do as my graduation project. But before that project, I wanted to do 2 or 3 short films the idea was to make 2 or 3 short films that could be shot in 1 day, very simple, like 2 people, 2 characters, 1 location, and so that's how Skipper actually happened. It came out of that intention. And Serori was a script I started drafting, working on the idea. But at the time, I was thinking of shooting it either in Spain or in the Netherlands. And somehow, I didn't really find the way to, finish the script, or it was like, I like the idea and I'd love to be able to make this, but at the same time, I could see all the potential, obstacles, or basically I could see that maybe I wasn't ready enough to tackle it in the right way or something. So, and then when I was in Japan, it was my first trip there because I went there with my Sayaka, who is my wife now. At the time, we just maybe met a few months before, like a half a year before, and it was my first time there. And she has friends who are actors in a theater group, and then one of the friends, we talked and we said, let's do something together while you're here. And so I thought, okay, what can we do? And I brought this script idea back, and somehow the idea of fitting it in a Japanese context, it clicked. Suddenly everything clicked in a way that it made more sense or something. I felt like this Japanese atmosphere would work better for this story. So I finished the script, and in the end I didn't actually shoot with him because so it's weird because the whole thing started with wanted to work with him, but in the end he was very excited to do it, and he proposed the actress Nita-san, which was great. She was also in a theater group that not in the same as him but in another one, and they sometimes work together. But then because I was there only for a limited time, and so we planned the day to shoot, and I arranged the camera and everything, and then he got called for like a very big TV series, a very, very big Japanese TV series, so it was like he couldn't say no to that. But yeah, so that's how it started.
No, and if you look at the two films that we've shown, not many filmmakers have had two short films in this program, but you're one of them. And if you look at both, you see that there are obviously common threads that go beyond these two films and go to your cinema. There is intergenerational communication, even change roles or role change in characters from traditional perspective to a bit confuse the filmmaker. Communication, solitude, and that particular element of the distance of the camera, no? So from more the script aspects or the story aspects to the more formal aspects, I don't know if you could tell us about those, about the story and those formal aspects that make your universe so particular.
Yeah, that was a period where I was let's say experimenting with that, or trying, I was trying it out in a way, like because my background is in editing, I studied editing and I work as an editor. So when I made my first short films in Norway in 2011, I had already been editing for a few years, and just from the experience of learning, from how other directors approach their films and their, the way they work and the way they think about how to plan a film, etc. I started developing these ideas of, and trying to work with a feeling of real time, trying not to alter too much with the edit, long shots, distance, this kind of almost like between theater and cinema, and I tried that the first time in a film called 15 Summers Later, which is a 5 minutes short film in a fjord in Norway, and that was really let's say an experiment, just a way for me to try, okay, can I really I don't know, make this work, or can I find a way to make this something like a style, or to call it something. And it was funny because I remember when I wrote the script for 15 Summers Later, and then I was thinking about how to shoot it, and I was reading a lot of those like books, tips from filmmakers, and how to plan your film or this kind of thing, no? And there's always this thing that comes like, give yourself limits, give yourself a set of rules of what you can and what you cannot do, and limits will boost your creativity. So I imposed myself many limits in that film. I remember I made a list that was like, no editing. I thought, since I'm an editor, let's try a film without editing. No music, no camera movements, no effects, of any kind, like visual or sound effects. And the last one was I was also reading this thing about like the point of maximum attention in the image, which is always eyes. Whenever there are eyes in a screen, that's where we look at. So I thought, okay, let's try to make a film where we can't see, the actors' eyes, and that's how I made that. And then I felt I liked that film, and although it took me a while to realize whether it was something people would like or not, but after that film, when it went well, it went to many festivals. So the experience of sharing that film with an audience that would appreciate it, that encouraged me to say, okay, let's try this in a longer scripts, longer 15 minutes short film. So that's how I try. It was a kind of like an evolution in those three films. 15 Summers Later, Skipper, and Serori.
Okay. Yes, and it really the camera distance is obviously something that there is an evolution. I don't know how many of those limitations do you still keep or are part of your set of rules, or now that you're shooting your first feature, how many of those are left?
I think I became more flexible about them, not so strict, because it's easier if it's a 5 minutes film, or like, for example, going from 5 minutes in 15 Summers Later to 15 minutes in a Skipper or Serori was already, it was already obvious that there was a challenge, that you could not do it in just like one shot. A Skipper was almost one shot. There's like a coda at the end. But yeah, I think there's an essence of a certain minimalism and a certain level of distance from what's happening that I think that's still there.
And I guess it's a sweet or a challenge for actors, because you really are skipping and discarding some of the elements of filmmaking, maybe, or some style of filmmaking that we've been watching for ages, and it's all left to actors and dialogue and a good script. But I don't know how you feel that working with actors particularly.
Yeah, it's. I mean, for me, it was always a priority, because it's also the kind of cinema I enjoy. Of course, I like cinema that is very about more like a sensorial experience. About the visuals, but this cinema that I enjoy the most is always about. It's like very close to human perspective, and therefore it's always, the acting is always in the forefront, strong performances that are very genuine. So I always tried to achieve, that. And it's also the kind of story that I'm interested in telling, or working with. So I really enjoy the work with actors. So for me, it's the most enjoyable part. And I think at least all the actors I've worked with in my projects, they all have, I think they all enjoyed the opportunity that is not so often given to them in cinema, to, like you say, action and cut is 15 minutes later, because you shoot a 15 minutes take without stopping. And it's really like going a bit in a theater play mode for them, and they have to stay in character and swim along until the end.
Well, Alberto was saying a couple of things I disagree with.
As always, you will know, Rafa and I disagree on 90% of the things.
Oh, that's nice.
No, that's not true, Alberto. 90% is too much. No. 51%, I think is.
Imagine programming films with 90% disagreeing on everything. No, it's not.
No, films we tend to agree. In the rest, no. One of the things is you were talking about working with actors and that, and what I see as a common thing on the free short films I've seen of yours is the secrets, the human secrets. We all have our hidden things. I got a puppy. It's true. I have a very young dog. And the first thing he's done is get an old box and fill it with papers and pieces of string and stuff that he has found around the flat. And it's his stuff. And in Skipper, in the Celery, we have this kind of secrets of people that they really need to get out. And it's amazing how you managed to get this. Another thing I disagree with Alberto, sorry, is that we have shown 2 of your films this month. In reality, we have shown 3, because our last event live with audience, inviting people in March, we show Muedra as part of our animation week.
Oh yeah, but I'm only the producer in that one.
Exactly. Well, that's what I wanted to get. You don't direct this Muedra, but you produce it, and They're so busy.
Rafa is worried about you, Pedro. You need to stop.
How you change hat from the editor to director to producer and a few other things you do, writing as well?
Yeah, from editing to writing and directing, I think it was a sort of a more very natural evolution in a way. For me, when I started in film school, I mean in Madrid, I was 20 or 19 years old, and of course it's like, okay, so choose your specialty. And of course I feel like, oh, you don't know so much about cinema, so you think, well, director sounds like the coolest job you can have in a film. But I also feel like, what am I going to direct or even write about? Like, I don't, I'm just a 19-year-old guy. I haven't, my life is not really that interesting. So I thought, and at the time I remember I used to do skateboard with my friends, and I had a little mini DV video camera. So sometimes I would film my friends, skating. And then I was starting to play a bit with Adobe Premiere to edit the skating video. So I thought, oh, well, editing, it's fun. I do it already at home sometimes, and it's fun. And it could be something I could make a profession out of. And it's a good way to learn about cinema. And it's also, you learn, it's kind of, the rewriting of the film, right? It's like, it's writing after the shooting instead of before the shooting, right? And so I took it as this is to say that maybe I was, the interest in writing and directing was already there from the beginning, but it just took, I took years to learn something before I felt like, or it just, I just didn't have it in me. I didn't have like a story that I would say, oh, let's direct this until later. But then the producing is more of I don't know, like from making my own short films. So often, I mean, almost in all of them, I had to do some level of production. In some of them, everything. In some of them, part of it. So it was more like a skill developed out of necessity, not out of interest, personal interest. In
it wasn't your career choice.
Yes, but then I realized how important it is, and how relevant it is, and how it can be done in a way that it can be, I wouldn't say 100% enjoyable, because it's maybe the most painful part of the, I think, all the tasks in making a film. And so when I started focusing a couple of years ago, I started focusing my efforts on developing short feature films. And I felt bad about stopping this activity of producing short films, there was something that I felt, maybe now I can do this for other people, for people I admire, because I've been making short films for like 8 years or 9. I made 8 short films. So I've been really, like the short film world, and going to festivals and meeting people making short films. And I've been, it's been a big part of my life the last decade. And I really enjoyed it. It's a world that I love, truly. And I've met so many great people and filmmakers that are so talented. So I thought, maybe I can help some of them. So, and that's, for example, how the Muedra, it was the first effort to produce someone else's short film, because I met Cesar in festivals before. I think the first time we met in Soria with a film he had, Cepo, and I immediately recognized that he has a very unique style, a very unique voice in animation. And I also I like the idea of producing other people's short films that are very different from what I do. Like stop motion animation is something I don't do. But yeah, so
stop motion animation. What a challenge.
There is something about animators, Pedro. We cannot help it either.
Yeah, no, quite right. And particularly focusing on what Rafa was saying, but maybe more on the editor director aspect. We feel like sometimes, and I've been talking with Rafa about this, about one trip we did to Colombia, and you go in one of those big airplanes, with like 8 rows, and each one of those have a screen. And I went to the toilet, and we're going back to my seat. I can see, I don't know, like 80 screens, and they all have, you know, like action, fire, a car clash, you know, chasing. It's all very spectacular. And it made me think about how we miseducated a little bit our gaze, or how sometimes the video our eyes see and we consume have gone to a very fast cut, fast edit, action, spectacle. You know, it's like a drag, you know, just it feels a bit like that. And being an editor is quite remarkable, the choices that you make. Then as a director of, you know, one take, let's not show off here as an editor maybe. One take, not many resources, not many footage for you to play. I don't know if you could tell us a bit more about being an editor, these directorial choices afterwards, or about the general aspect of this massification or contamination of our gaze.
Oh, the last one, it's a harder one to comment on, I think. The other one, I guess it's just like a personal inclination, maybe.
Sorry.
So you know, the kind of my taste is very eclectic, you know, as most people who we are cinephiles, but I would say always in the top priorities, or in the top the films that most have inspired me, or the filmmakers filmography that have most inspired me, are filmmakers that work with a perspective that's very attached to reality, to human reality, and therefore the you know, I think the closest you can get to human perspective in cinema is not altering the time, or at least managing achieving to, you can maybe alter, but it doesn't feel altered, you know. So it's the opposite of what you're saying. These action movies usually do the opposite, you know, make everything go faster, and you know, every shot is maximum 3 seconds long. You know, 3 seconds is already too long in an action movie for a shot. And the feeling of just going with the flow of real time. But of course, there's a lot of it's a big challenge actually, because there's a lot of internal kind of editing that you have to make in the way the scene is written, or in the way the scene is planned, so that it, you know, so that you don't have a lot of really slow dead time, let's say, within the shot. And it's just a, yeah, I think it's just been like a bit of my intuition always brought me there. And it's also maybe when I was only editing before I started trying myself as a writer director, maybe I could also already feel that, you know, when I got the material from other directors, if I start watching a take and the take is going well and it's going well and it, you know, it flows, I would always try to offer the director, don't, you know, I know you have 3 other angles that you shot, but you know, there's something so strong in just staying here as long as everything, you know, technically and in terms of acting is going well. Why would you change to another angle? No, like, there's maybe, and that's what I, you know, when I started making my own short films, I was maybe a bit too obsessed about that. This idea, I think it was Godard, no, who was saying one shot, one idea, no, like if you're gonna change to cut to a new shot, you have to bring in a new idea to the film. Otherwise, there's no reason you should, you know, show a different angle.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, and again, it feels, because the many countries, because the many things, because we were saying the similarities on the first film, but if you then go into Of Ice and Atos and Sen and your films, it really feels eclectic. And talking with, I think it was Pablo from Marvin in One Alcine, he was just like talking about, just like, fuck, you know, it's hard to feel. It's like the Spanish Woody Allen. Every year there's a new short film by Pedro, and each one is, you know, in a different country, in a different style, and it's great to have someone bringing that uniqueness. Rafa, I don't know if we have time for another closing question, or shall we wrap there?
Well, we could be here the rest of the Sunday. It's so interesting how it goes. I balance myself. Like, I prefer to leave it there, with the promise that as soon as we can, we will talk about cinema from Madrid. We always do. Every year we find a space and bring you here, watch our films together, and see, and then talk at length with a good pint of lager and an import whiskey, and that's it. That's the promise.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I love that.
and hopefully the first feature finished. But I don't know. It was meant to probably, since he was developing in Venice in the Biennale, probably he was aiming to go there. Or I don't know if that is still. I think he's still hoping that it goes ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's part of a program they have in the Biennale called Biennale College Cinema to make what they call micro budget films. So the film is very minimalist. It's a micro film from the budget and from everything else. But yeah, and the program is like, I think they announced the four selected films that would be produced in December, and the idea was that the films have to be ready for the festival, which is September. So you have less than a year actually to finalize, to make the film.
No pressure.
No pressure, yes. And so now, we are in the uncertainty of what's going to happen, if there is going to be a Venice Film Festival in September. I hope, next month in June or something, according to how things evolve, they will make a final decision. I don't know. At the moment, we don't know. We keep working as if we still have that deadline, trying to have the film ready for the festival in September if it happens. And and let's see, hopefully in a month or something, we'll know more.
Well, if not, we just, because always we depend on the premiere in London Film Festival or in a bigger festival before we can bring it here. But you can always save the premiere.
Well, not that much. We are not that tricky. Sometimes we have to let them have the premiere.
Right.
Everybody would prefer to have it in cinematic, obviously.
Okay, we can't guarantee press, but we can guarantee whiskey.
Okay, well, then that's the best premiere.
Pedro, thanks so much for such a body of work, or for doing what you do, really, and for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Great to meet you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice Sunday.
Ciao.
Adiós. Adiós, Pedro.
Bueno, Alberto, pues we are spoiled here today with great guests, great brother, very generous people with their ideas and their ways to do the films they do.
I love it. Sometimes we get really specific about some formal aspect of filmmaking of one director, and sometimes very expansive and philosophical about big questions. But yeah, it's our little space for sharing with you, the people at the other side. Hopefully you liked it today. Next week we have again another tremendous program, no, Rafa?
Tremendous. We're going crescendo from a very high point. How can it be?
We're going to have shorts by Carla Simon. Obviously, now she's very well known for Summer 1993, Steve 1993. But we have films by Adrián Or. We have great comedies. We have we have like it would be like how you say, the Parthenon or the gods of Spanish short film contemporary history. You will put there Collantes, Altuna, Los Alenda, but you will put there Esteban Crespo, you will put there Toni Bestard, and we have those two next week. We have, again, Ana Solanas and Mark Riva and those horrifying original animations that we love. And we have Victor XX, another very promising talent. So another really strong. I'm impressed by the work that we do, Rafa, that we managed to keep.
What is that the summary of a 10-year effort to show the best we could? So it wasn't that bad. I'd like to say one thing to finish. At the moment, as we speak, CinemaAttic in Facebook, the main CinemaAttic, we have 4 groups, but the main one has 3,816 people who like the group. Page. But
sorry,
3,986 people following us. It would be great to cross the 4,000 barrier this week. This week, we just need 14 people.
To cross the Mississippi.
To cross the Mississippi. So it would be great. I mean, it's one of the things that is happening here in the Cuarentena. Lots of people are finding us, no? And we get all this traffic from South America, Central America. Mexico.
Getting
or-
overwhelmed by the people from Ciudad de México, from Lima, from Buenos Aires, Córdoba in Argentina.
If anyone is watching us from there, you're a hero watching CinemaAttic at 6 in the morning or something like that. But anyway,
Cali, because I've seen Manuela connecting, so that we have some people
yeah,
from
Maria,
Cali watching as well.
and Maleja, I see her as well here. Maleja from Valle de Cauca, Colombia.
Let's leave it there, Rafa. Let's enjoy Sunday, whatever is ahead for us.
Have you called your mom?
I haven't, but we have a wee Zoom or WhatsApp call planned for later today. So I hope you do the same.
Anyway, great to see you, Alberto. Great to feel the presence of all the cinematicos and cinematicas of this planet. And looking forward to be here again, same place, same time, just on a week. And watch the films and vote your favorite. Go to the event in Facebook and vote.
You go to discussion, you vote. We're very competitive. We're guys, we're machos. We need a competition. We need a winner. We can't help it. So
I don't always agree with what Alberto says, but it sounds good.
Our subconscious say that we want a winner.
All the best, guys. Keep well, keep safe, and come back to CinemaAttic.
See you next week. Have a lovely weekend, end of weekend, and see you next week. Bye, Rafa.
Bye, Alberto.